obviously we're getting to the very pointy end of 2023 and we're going to transition into 2024, a Summer Olympics year. But that doesn't mean that we still can't talk about the Winter Olympics, because you know how much we love the Winter Olympics here on Off the Podium. And I'm so excited to be able to talk to our guest today. I'm calling her an Olympian. There's a technicality there, but we'll get to that. I'm still calling her an Olympian. Outside of her being an Olympian, a esteemed career already in the sport of alpine skiing, an 8-time Australian national team member, a NORAM winner earlier this year, as well as achieving 3 podium results outside of that in the NORAMs. Division 1 NCAA individual slalom and giant slalom champion in 2023, as well as a variety of other great esteemed events that she has competed in, as well as a history-making result that she achieved only very recently, we will touch on. It's a pleasure to welcome off the podium Madi Hoffman. Madi, first of all, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here on Off the Podium today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here and have a chat.
I'm excited to have a chat with you and go over some of these amazing results. Can I just, first of all, I want to commend you on your website. I do love it when we have a guest on our show who has a very good website, which makes my job a lot easier when I can just find all the information in one place. So first of all, thank you. Great website.
Thanks. Yeah, I did that this summer when I was looking at trying to get some sponsorship stuff. So I put it together, but it's actually kind of fun to do too.
MadiHoffman.com, by the way, if people want to check it out. Does it work? Like, I mean, is it sort of makes it very, I guess, streamlined and easy? And then do you sort of get the sponsors kind of asking you, you know, how much do you want us to give you, basically, straight away, because it's so easy?
Yeah, it's kind of something that, I don't know, no one ever like comes to me off of my website. It's like when I reach out to brands or people, I like attach that to just basically say if they want more information. So an email I'm sending them isn't paragraphs long. It can be kind of short. And then if they're interested, then they can go find more info somewhere that's like all in one place.
It does the job very well. So sponsors, please sponsor it. It's fantastic. It helps podcast hosts as well. So that's always a positive as well. Always love finding out, obviously, for all our guests on the show, how they get involved in the sport that they are competing in. But you're from the northern beaches of Sydney, if I'm not mistaken. So how does somebody from the northern beaches of Sydney end up on ski slopes? It doesn't really come together that well that way.
No, I know. It's definitely kind of random, but I guess I grew up skiing. I don't know, we would go down to the snow maybe a couple of weeks a year, not even. Me and my family, I have 3 younger brothers, so it's a bit of a family affair. And then when I was in year 3, I moved primary schools, and the primary school that we moved to, they had an inter-schools team, which is basically where you can just go compete for your school, like during the school holidays. And they like made an announcement at like the morning assembly, like, oh, if anyone skis, like come pick up this flyer type of thing and bring it home to your parents. So I brought it home to mum and dad, and we just moved schools and trying to find some friends. And that's how I could do it. So I joined inter-schools and met some really good friends, and their parents actually used to ski race for Australia. So they kind of took us under their wing, and I guess the rest is kind of history from there. Yeah, we just kept going to the snow, and then we would go overseas and started off with 2 weeks in America. Then it was 4, then it was 6 weeks, and it was like 3 months. And then it was the entire season. And yeah, we just kind of kept going back and forth, and never really turned back.
Yeah, it's incredible to kind of have that journey with that. And I always love finding out from skiers, because there's obviously 3 main disciplines you look at when it comes to skiing: freestyle, alpine, and Nordic. Is it a case, and I generally find with most Australians it's usually the same answer, but like, is it a case of just that racing you started, did you try sort of your hand at things like Nordic or freestyle and just stuck with alpine because that was the one you liked the best?
Yeah, well, so when I was younger, kind of doing the inter-schools things, at one point I was racing in the Nordic events, the mogul events, and the snowboarding events, so like the border cross and the snowboard GS. And then I broke my elbow snowboarding. And so at that point I was kind of getting to a point where I needed to pick, and I broke my elbow, and then I was like, okay, no more snowboarding. I haven't broken a bone yet in skiing. So then I just picked skiing out of all of them. So
makes it simple then when you don't break a bone in one. That's kind of the other way. I was reading, though, you tried your hand at some other sports. You actually had a dream of playing for the Matildas. So you had a bit of a soccer passion as well. Was that kind of juggling them both at a young age?
Yes, when I guess mom and dad always said they put me in soccer when I was like 4 or something because netball didn't start until 5. So my dad played soccer growing up and mom played netball. Um, and yeah, so they put me in soccer. I think when you have, I don't know, they had 4 kids all 2 years apart. So I think they were just trying to find something for us to do. And yeah, I played on, there wasn't a girls' team until you're about 10 or 11 or something. So I was playing with the boys for a long time. And there'd be many weekends where we would have 6 soccer games on a Saturday, and then I would go play with the girls' team on a Sunday. And yeah,
Wow.
that was actually pretty hard to juggle. And I remember, I think that was the one time I had to pick between, or like I can vividly remember picking skiing over something else, was because our like, I guess, whatever championship game in soccer was on the same weekend as our like state skiing event. And they're like, you have to pick which one you want to do. And I picked skiing. So that
One of
was like
those.
the only vivid remember. I mean, like the specific thing where I can be like, I pick skiing over something else.
It's kind of like one of those sliding door moments, though, where it's like a
Yeah.
what if? Like, I mean, what if you had chosen soccer that weekend? Could we be
I
talking
know.
about you being a Matildas player right now? Who knows?
Never know. Maybe in a past life, I'll come back as a soccer player
Yeah. Well, you still got
or
time.
a
You're still
future
young,
life. I
right?
mean,
Like, you know,
yeah.
you never know with that. It's also, I guess, crazy to sort of read just sort of you're talking about traveling the world and everything about then your family moves to the US to sort of help with yours and your brother's careers. I mean, what's that like to be able to have your parents who, I guess, are willing to do that to kind of help pursue that for you growing up?
Yeah. So, well, before we moved to the US, we actually lived in Singapore for 3 years. So we left Australia. I don't know what year it was, but I was in year 5. Maybe 2010, maybe.
Gee, you're
And
making
then
me
we,
feel old, Maddie, when you say
yeah,
that's when
I
you're
don't
in
know.
year
I don't even
five.
know what year that was, but yeah, we moved to Singapore for 3 years. So at that, when we were living in Singapore, we were kind of doing back-to-back winters. So we'd go to the States for a winter and then we would go to Australia for their winter. And so I'd only really be in school from term 2 and term 4. And that got really hard in terms of like just like friendships. And I was at an international school in Singapore. So, or every time I would come back, like one of my friends, like their family had moved back to Australia or moved somewhere else. So it was very like transient kind of lifestyle. And it was really, really hot. And so it was hard to like do stuff outside. And I don't think my parents necessarily loved that. And we had kind of fallen in love with Park City in Utah. And they're like, okay, let's go do something else and see something new. And yeah, we packed it up and moved to the States. And now we've been there for nearly 10 years, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, it's very nice to have. I don't know if I could have done it without like my family moving. I never was like, I need you guys to move with me. It was very much like mom and dad wanted to move and us skiing was like a byproduct of that. But it's very nice having everyone kind of close by.
Can't imagine there's many ski mountains close to Singapore. There's a bit of travel involved there, really.
Yeah, no mountains. Maybe if you go to Dubai and ski inside, but yeah,
True.
no mountains.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not too far. Do your brothers also ski, or did they ski sort of at the time, and do they still ski?
Yeah, all my brothers actually, they still compete. So one of them is competing at university in America as well. The next one is he just graduated high school last year, so he's having a bit of a gap year skiing. And then the youngest one is in year 11 and he's at a ski academy in Utah. So
Wow.
yeah.
So we could be having the multi-generational Hoffman family over the coming years.
Yep, there are lots of us.
That's crazy. And is it a case of are you all sort of alpine and then are you all slalom, giant slalom, or do you sort of all alternate, or is it kind of just the family
Yeah.
business is slalom and giant slalom?
I think if someone wanted to do anything else, they'd be like everyone would support them to do if they didn't want to ski and do other sports, or if they wanted to do speed, but we've kind of just all stuck with slalom and GS. And I think, yeah, I wouldn't even say it's that like competitive among the 4 of us. Yeah, like we all kind of joke around like siblings do, but at the end of the day, we're actually all just like hoping the best. So, but yeah, everyone does stick with slalom and GS, but I think that makes mom a bit happier knowing that we're not all just speeding down a mountain doing speed and nearly dying all the time. But no, it's all good.
There are always some sports that just always fascinate me why people choose them, and slalom's one of them because, I see with, say, a downhill, it's fast, it's adrenaline, and not to say that slalom isn't fast, but you're literally banging into giant poles. I have vivid memories as an 11-year-old watching Zali Steggall win that bronze in Nagano to age me, and learning about slalom for the very first time as a kid, and seeing the equipment and seeing all the kind of just the weirdness that it is of a sport for somebody from a country where we don't often see snow-based sports. But what was it about slalom and then giant slalom that appealed to you over, say, a downhill?
I think that, I guess when you're younger, you just do a lot more slalom and GS than you do speed events. And I think what's drawn me towards the more technical disciplines now is there's something very satisfying, and I'm sure people can say the same about speed, but there's something very satisfying with making like a really good slalom or GS turn. And I think right now, like I have a little bit too much, I think I'd have too much fear to do the speed events. Like you kind of have to just send yourself down a mountain really, really fast. And yeah, I really enjoy the tech disciplines. I think part of it's because you go a little bit slower. And like as much as I like to go fast, I think doing the speed events that's just a completely different ball game. It's yeah, that's crazy. And I have so much respect for those people. But yeah, the slalom and GS is more my cup of tea. And yeah, hitting the gates in slalom, it doesn't hurt, so that's good. Unless you miss your arm guards or your shin guards, which that sometimes can give you a sting. But apart from that, it's kind of satisfying, just like hearing the sound of the plastic and just going down the mountain.
I was going to say stress relief too, because it's like a boxing motion when you're going into them, isn't it?
Yeah, and when you make a mistake and if you blow out and then you ski out, you can just give it a little punch and then you're like, okay, moving on.
Not many sports where if you do stuff up, you're allowed to kind of physically assault something without getting sort of a penalty, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Not too bad with that. Did you harbour Olympic aspirations from a young age? Was this something that when you started in the sport, you were like, right, this is it, Olympics, this is where I want to be?
Yeah, maybe not necessarily at the start of the sport, but I don't know, when I was like 11 or 12, I remember sitting down with my coaches and they like, you do like goal setting or whatever at the beginning of the season. And it's like, what's your like season goals? What's your like 10-year goals? What's your like big scary goal? Like, and I remember putting Olympics down. Basically, the only reason I vividly remember putting it down then is because I spelt it wrong.
How did you spell it?
I don't even know, but I was like, they're like, that's not how you do it. I was like, got it. I should figure that out before I say that.
First goal, learn how to spell Olympics.
Learn how to spell Olympics. Second goal, try and make it there.
Wow.
But yeah, so for a while, it's kind of been in the back of my head.
It's one of those things that in our sort of closing questions, if we'll get to, there's often one of the questions is, what was the first Olympics you remember watching, which always makes me feel very old. You say you're about 11, 12 when you do that. So that would have been what, just after Vancouver, heading into Sochi? Would that have been around that period?
Yeah, I think the first Olympics I remember watching was Britt Cox in Vancouver when she was skiing the moguls.
What, 15, 16 then, wasn't she? Very young Brit.
Yeah, I remember, we were like in our living room in Australia watching it. So
wow.
We obviously hadn't been doing full American seasons then in 2010 because I was in Sydney watching that, and they're usually in February. But yeah, I remember watching it.
That, again, ages me to be able to say that, I was 11 when Zali Steggall won that bronze and you were, -2. So, which obviously we'll touch on. I mean, Queen Zali, as we call her on this show, we're very obviously big Zali fanboys here on Off the Podium. What's the system like in high school when it comes to skiing? Obviously, we'll touch on university in the US, but compared to what you were used to in New South Wales, going to Thredbo, things like that, did you sort of get to Utah and go, whoa, okay, slightly different? I mean, was it a bit of an eye-opener compared to Australia?
Yeah, it's like, I guess the big thing that stood out to me was, and like I never went to high school in Australia, but I had a lot of friends, obviously, that were still in high school in Australia and still skiing. And the big thing that like separated it, apart from the fact that like when I was in skiing in high school in America, we would go to school with regular kids. Like our school was set up a little uniquely compared to other ski academies that are just ski races and then you go to school. Where the school I went to, the school was maybe 300 kids from year 9 to 12, and there was 30 of us on the ski academy. So we would just slot into regular classes. Like I could be sitting in math without next to someone who doesn't even know what skiing is, which was really nice to have that like normalness, I guess you could say. And yeah, we went to school normally they broke it up into 3 semesters in a year. So the first and third, we would go as normal students, like 8 to 3 or whatever it was. And then in the winter, we would just have our core classes. So we'd have 4 core classes that would rotate in the morning and for everyone, but they would just rotate in the morning, and then we would ski in the afternoon. So we would have to, over our entire high school career, would have to take I think I took 2 history classes online over a summer. But apart from that, it was like a normal kid. So that was it was actually quite easy. And I still think to this day, my days in high school were way harder than uni in terms of juggling the time and all of the stuff, just because we would I'd work out before school, go to school from 8 to 3. We would have workout after school. I wouldn't get home until 5:45, 6. I'd have to study, and like, it was crazy. And I'm like, Maddie, I'm tired now when I go to class for like 2 hours a day. This is so bad. But like, it was nuts what we did. But when you're young, you can do anything, I guess.
It's crazy. Wow.
But yeah, it was kind of just like skiing slotted into normal life, where I feel like my friends that were trying to ski in Australia, once you got to, trying to do your HSC, or I think that's what it's still called. But yeah, like year 11 and 12, like you couldn't miss school. You couldn't go away. It was just like, once you got to that point, school kind of had to go above skiing.
That's crazy. That's 5 days a week essentially that you're doing that.
Yeah.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay. That's incredible. Which,
I guess, and we would ski on the weekends too. So.
Well, I guess at the end of the day, though, that's you can reflect to that, and that's obviously helped you throughout your career, because I guess it sets a mentality of training, hard work, discipline, all that kind of things that you're using, no doubt, today in your skiing career, and sort of really built you into the athlete who you are today, and keeps improving on that.
Yeah, and I actually think like when I look back at like high school, even though it's like hard, the skills I learned with communicating and being proactive in terms of like if I knew I had an exam coming up or a test coming up and we were going to be on the road, like I had to reach out to my teachers beforehand. I had to be very much like in charge of not letting things, like I had to be in charge of my, I guess, commitments in terms of school. And so those skills of like advocating for myself with teachers have like paid dividends now, because like when I have to reach out to my professors at university, like I have all those skills and I'm very much on top of my work to be able, like where they can't say no for me to be gone kind of thing.
Well, what's that like just from normal teenage life perspective, and then also growing up in a foreign country? I mean, there's a quote that you've got on your website, which I love, around about your nationality, which I want to touch on. But I mean, obviously for you've spent a large portion of those formative years growing up in the US, being surrounded by Americans, no doubt, which I'm sure in itself is a lot of fun. But like, I mean, is there a part of you that gets homesick and sort of misses maybe some Australian things that perhaps you didn't get to experience during those years?
Yeah, it's funny you ask, because for so long when I was, I think, kind of like in high school, or maybe the first 5 years or so we lived in the US, I was like, I don't see myself ever going back to Australia. Like all my friends are here and all my family's here and it's great. I don't, apart from like my extended family, like, and a couple friends and I still have in Sydney, like I don't really have any like connection to it. But then as time went on, I was like, no, I think I'm going to go back. I really feel like I need to go back to Australia. And I really want to go back. It's a very special place. And I think the more I travel the world, the more I kind of realize that. Like whenever I'm anywhere and I hear an Australian accent, I'm like, oh, that's so refreshing. Like that makes me feel like home again. So yeah, there was definitely some things about America that I've loved, but yeah, I see myself coming back to Australia. There's nothing like the beaches and the food and the people. So,
well, I was going to ask, what's the one thing you miss about Australia the most?
I think I would say it's the lifestyle, because that kind of incorporates, the food, the scenery, or like the activities, the beaches, the just like kind of activeness. Like this is such a weird thing to like point at, but I feel like whenever I'm in Australia, I can like walk to the shops and like go to the grocery store and I don't have to drive necessarily everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of unique. Like in America, like you want to leave the house, you have to drive.
Yeah.
Or at least what we are. So it's like something as simple as just being able to go for a walk and get your morning coffee. It's like, oh, that's so nice.
And
Simple
proper
life.
coffee too. No disrespect to our American friends, but proper coffee, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
The coffee. Yeah.
Are you used to drip coffee? Is that just, you just got used to it after a while?
I don't indulge in the drip coffee. My parents my mom especially, when we moved to America, my mom's owned restaurants and cafes her entire life. So she hated the food scene in Park City. So she built her own Australian cafe. So I'll drink coffee at Harvest, but apart from that, I don't drink coffee.
I do. It is a very interesting thing. Like having myself lived in the US and North America, and just sometimes I found I had really no choice but to go that direction. But then I love it in certain parts where you do have those Australian cafes, which obviously you go, okay, here we go. Is there food? Like what particular food in Australia do you miss the most?
I think I don't really know how to describe it. I was actually talking to my coaches because we trained in New Zealand this summer. So we overnighted in Sydney on the way home and we went out and got like really yummy Asian food. And I was like, you don't realize how much Asian fusion or just like Asian food there is in Australia and how much that we actually eat it. Like I don't really.
And it's different, isn't it? Because Americans do it different. And like little things like dim sims are like the most random thing that I miss when I'm overseas because you can't get an Australian dim sim overseas, can you?
Or like even just like going to Yum Cha or like getting pie or it's just good. It's just good food. Yeah. So I think, that's what I miss as when we're in the States, there are a few places that have like okay food, but if we want yummy meal, we like ask our mom to cook it or we cook because she cooks it better.
Well, I was going to ask you because you say on your website that you enjoy cooking yummy food. So is that where it is? Is that like the Asian fusion and that sort of food that you enjoy cooking?
There's definitely some, I like cooking that kind of food. It's like, it's simple, but always yum. So.
Because I always find that, a lot of Australians you talk to overseas, I miss Tim Tams, I miss shapes. Like you often will say like, I'm traveling and bring them. But I mean, you can buy them there now. So they're not really that special. It's those things that you can't get there, isn't it? Which you really miss. Yeah. Meat pie. Yeah. Like, are you a meat pie fan?
I definitely do love a good meat pie. I think I'm more of a sausage roll kind of girl, but I do love a good meat pie.
No, sausage roll. I'm there. Yeah, I'm with you with that. I do like, though, sort of mentioning on your website about, you say here in your lessons learned, number 2, you've got here, as an Australian, I often draw inspiration from my nationality when standing in the start gate. I'd love you to explain that. Like, what do you mean by that? Yeah,
so ski racing is very European sport. There's not many people that aren't from like Central Europe. You got the Canadians and the Americans, but then it's very much heavily European dominated, and it's quite easy to feel intimidated by that because they have so many resources. There's so many of them just to begin with. Like there's just as many staff with the athletes that they have, and it can be quite like you're like, oh, can I really compete? It's just me and like my coach and my tech. Like these people have ample coaches and physios and strength trainers, and anywhere they go, they can get whatever they want. And it's kind of like a weirdly hierarchical, like there's very much a hierarchy within it. Like you get better training if you're like, the better you are, the better training you get. If you're not as good, then you like fall down the line of like where you can train and all this stuff. But in terms of like when I'm in the start gate, it's like I very vividly remember when I was like a U14 and it was like the first time I did well at like the international stage in a race in Canada. And I remember standing in the start gate being like show them that Aussies can ski, because everyone would be like, Australia, like you're Australian, like you can ski, like there's snow there, like blah, 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 blah. And so I often like kind of channeled that, being like, no, like you can like go show them that like you can actually do something, and like don't count me out just because I'm Australian. Like I ski just as, you know what I mean? So that's where I kind of draw that inspiration.
The Aussie battler mentality kind of.
Yeah. I feel like there's a very much underdog mentality within Australians in sport. And so that's what I like to channel when I'm in the Stargate. Like,
I
don't count me.
love hearing it so much because I think that the most fascinating thing I find with speaking to guests on this show from your non-traditional countries with certain sports is that element. And it's obviously for Australians, it's mainly winter sports. We will say we have a lot of Canadians on this show, say from summer sports for them, where maybe it's the opposite for them. And it's just, it is that mentality because going back to sort of your high school years and your schedules and sort of how hard you're working, but there's always that element of working harder sometimes from where you're from to show people what you're made of and show how good you can be, which again, I'm sure helps you out and makes you perform stronger and go towards stronger results.
Yeah, and it's funny because people, I guess because I've lived in the States for so long, everyone I think kind of assumes now that I have like an American citizenship or something. And they're like, why don't you race for America? I'm like, I don't have a passport. I don't get it. Like, why are you asking that question? They're like, oh, like, would you if you could? I was like, no, like, I'm not American or like, I'm not any, like, because there, you know, some people, there are loopholes where you can switch your nationality if you want to, if there's, and I was like, I'm good. I'll stick with my Australian flag. I like it. So,
well, I mean, different form of skiing, but I just will pay mention to the one great person who did that came to Australia, Dale Berg-Smith, of course, won us an Olympic gold medal and an Olympic silver medal. So when that works for us, we're glad with that, but we don't want to lose you to them, to America, Maddie. So, you know.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I'm not going anywhere.
Which obviously we're going to touch on Beijing in just a moment. But in that period, obviously around 2016, there would have been a Youth Olympics. Were Youth Olympics ever a possibility for you in that period?
Yeah, so Youth Olympics is every 4 years and only 2 year births are eligible for it. Like, and I just fell in the off year births. So I could never go. Yeah.
Damn. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize like they're that strict with it. I thought there might be like a leeway kind of there.
Yeah, no, so it was like the ones, I can't remember where they were, but the ones before were like the 99 and 98 year birth. And then there was some in Lausanne a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And they were the 2002, 2003 year birth. And so my younger brother, he went to that but the 2000s and the 2001s, they completely, like you couldn't go. And
they just completely exclude you. Wow.
Yeah. So
that's crazy. I thought there would always kind of be like a leeway there, like, because that doesn't seem fair.
No, but you know, that's okay.
Yeah. How did your brother go at the Youth Olympics?
He did, I think it was like his biggest event he's ever done. So there was definitely some learning experiences, but he showed some really, really good skiing. He unfortunately had a cracking first run of GS, and then his skis were like 0.05 of a millimeter over the, I guess, the range that they can be in. Just basically the screws weren't screwed down as tightly as they could have been. And then he got disqualified.
Damn.
But like 0.5 millimeter, are you serious? I don't even know if I can see 0.5 millimeter.
Yeah. It is crazy the technicalities when it comes to some of these things, isn't it? Yeah. And how like you can even have a ruler that can measure that. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, and like that's unfortunately like the little things like that, that's not necessarily the price you pay for being an Australian, but a lot of that falls on our own shoulders. And when you're thinking about skiing and you have school to do and you're traveling and you're training and you have to do your skis, and like sometimes things slip through the cracks. And so that was one of them. And it was a learning lesson for like nearly everyone, and like everyone kind of around that, like, okay, no, that's something you need to like triple check it, because like that's really unfortunate if you get DQ'd because of that.
I mean, we've talked to many athletes in sports where that is a very, like ski jumping, for example. I know sort of how strict they are around suits and everything along those lines. And that, like, does that weigh on your mind much? Because I feel that is sometimes out of your control, because I'm sure you do go to your lengths to make sure everything is legal and fine, but then somehow something like that, again, as you say, 0.5 millimeter, how can you measure that? How can that happen? Like, does it weigh on your mind?
Yeah, I think if you want it to, it really can. Like luckily when it comes to like suits and all of that kind of stuff, we get them approved. So like I never have to worry about my suit being illegal. When it comes to like equipment, they have at like the big events, they have equipment testing the day or two before. And so when you set them up, you hope that you've set them up legally. sometimes things change or whatever, but you can always double check it. And so now it's just like, no matter what, like go and just double check, because that would be a really tough pill to swallow if you get to the bottom, you've had a good run, and then your boot is a millimeter over, or your binding is, you know what I mean? Like something little like that. And luckily for me now, like I have a technician, so I have someone that basically takes care of all my equipment, so I don't have to worry about that. It falls on his shoulders. So he takes my stuff and he makes sure they're good and he gives it back to me. And so that's really nice.
But if you get disqualified, he's fired. You get someone else.
Yeah. I'm like, that's your fault.
You're fired.
So far, we haven't had any issues, so that's been good.
Touch wood that continues.
Yeah, knock on some wood.
Before we get to Beijing, 2019 Junior World Champs, you rupture your patella tendon, 9-month rehabilitation. Now, going into that, sort of how were you feeling tracking? Obviously, I'm sure Beijing was the goal. And how did that affect what ultimately would lead to a successful qualification for Beijing? But, take us through sort of that 9-month period and that injury.
Yeah, well, so that year, that was my first year out of high school. And so I was training with like this small private team. It was me and 3 or 4 girls from, all of us were from a different different nation. So we came together and created this international team. And it worked out really great because none of us were directly competing against each other. We were all just hoping for everyone to do well kind of thing. And when I tore my patella at the World Juniors, I had been dealing with some tendonitis pain for actually quite a few years leading up to that. And never once did I actually think it would rupture because it's like a pretty big thing, big tendon. But once I had crashed and went down in the sled, I go to this janky little Italian hospital and they take x-rays and they check out my knee. And I remember vividly, my parents actually came and watched. So luckily mum and dad were there when this was all going down. But this guy in like extremely broken English was like, when you go home, you need MRI. I was like, okay. He's like, your ACL fine. I don't know what's wrong with you though. And I was like, what? Like, how does a doctor not know what's wrong with me? Like, that's so random.
Yeah.
And then luckily, like, because I had been around all of the Americans for so long and my coaches knew all the American coaches, I was able to go see the American physio that night. And they're like, yeah, no, I think your tendon's ruptured. And it's pretty easy actually to tell that a patella tendon's ruptured because you take an x-ray and your kneecap is up your quad, like your femur, it's like shifted up, like there's nothing holding it down onto your tibia. And luckily for me, I was actually in zero pain. Like I couldn't bend my leg. It had to stay straight until I had surgery, but I didn't have any pain. So I was like, okay. And ski racing's not a sport of if you get hurt, it's a matter of when you get hurt. And so when I got hurt then, I was like, oh, hey, this is my time. Like I'm doing my time. And I had no idea. I'd never had a knee surgery before. So I thought like once I had the surgery and post-op that it was, all of them were that painful and that difficult. And like, I just remember being in so much pain after surgery. But I thought that was normal. I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of a kicker. Like, no wonder everyone talks about not wanting to, like, this sucks. But I kind of just use it as like a time to find new hobbies and like a little bit like step away from the sport in a way. And I kind of found myself, and I really started to develop an identity outside of skiing, which proved very like positive because ski racing can be taken away from you very quickly. But yeah, I don't even think I was thinking about Beijing in that moment because it was still 2 or 3 years away. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to rehab this as best as I can, and no idea how it'll turn out on the other side. And luckily for me, it was a really positive experience. And I came back and had my best ever results, like the first race back, and all the nagging pain I had leading up to that, I now no longer had to deal with that. Like the surgery kind of fixed the pain that I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So overall, it was actually, I don't think of that injury as like the worst thing to have happened to me. I don't think any of mine are, but yeah, it just was like another step in the journey. My sports psych told me it was a chapter in my book. So,
well, I love hearing that and how helpful a sports psych could be, because I also always love hearing about that that first run that you do once you are ready to get back on skis? I mean, is there a level of almost fear in the back of your mind that of the last time you did this, you got that injury, or is that where the sports psych has kind of helped you get over that hump? So it's just back to work.
Yeah, well, I think the first time you get back in gates and start training the discipline that you necessarily hurt yourself, that can be not necessarily a little scary. It's kind of exciting, but you just do so much prep up until that moment. Like every time I've gotten hurt, like you do like 3 weeks of drills and free skiing and like baby gates, and like you basically every day you're just building a little bit more confidence. But yeah, there's something to be said about when you can't ski for 9 months, you just have this newfound sense of gratitude. And it's crazy how a little bit of gratitude can make you just feel and ski a whole lot better, because you just have a bit more appreciation for it. And every time I've come back, I've definitely just been so happy and grateful to be standing in the start gate that it's like a very freeing process to then just go down the mountain.
That period then, we get to the end of 2021, you make your World Cup debut, and from there, you ultimately will qualify for Beijing, which again, we will touch on. That period though, from the World Cup to the qualification, how confident were you at that point that this was going to happen, that you were going to be able to make those Olympics?
Yeah, at that point, I knew I knew Australia's like criteria. I knew my world rank was kind of on the bubble to like automatically qualify me, but it was just a matter of like continuing to build off last season and like chip away at my world rank and get some good results. But yeah, after I made my debut in Solden, I then went and raced Killington, and to be completely honest with you, now looking back on it, I definitely wasn't ready for that. But the season before was like a weird COVID year where there were no NORAMs and we like were in Europe, and it felt like I had missed like this crucial part in like a skier's like progression where you actually start to win races and then you go to the next level. It was like the year before COVID, or like the year COVID hit, the 2020 season. I was like starting to chip away at it and I was like getting close, and then COVID hit. Then we didn't have any like NORAMs and those kind of races. And I was still competing against the same girls. I just didn't have the wins and the podium finishes next to my name, even though I was competitive with the girls that were winning the year before. So I definitely didn't think I was ready. In the moment, I thought I was, but looking back, I definitely wasn't ready to compete at the World Cup level. But I did know that if things treaded positively, that Beijing was definitely in the cards. And then I actually tore my MCL in December before Beijing. And at that point, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'll be back in time to race to solidify my spot before Beijing. Like it's going to come down to like whether or not I can create the own spot myself. And so that was a little bit stressful. Not a little bit. That was nearly the most stressed and anxious I've been in my entire life, just because I couldn't do anything. I was trying to heal. I didn't want to race too soon because like that's dangerous, but it was just this whole thing. So yeah.
I guess it's also one of those things where you're being told a lot of different angles from doctors and all that because you're so young and you're this close to an Olympics. There's kind of that balance, I can imagine. Like I'm this close. I can taste the Olympics there in a couple of months versus you're young. You've got another 3-4 Olympics in you. I mean, kind of what is that where it's really challenging as well, balancing the kind of doing more damage to your body to go to one Olympics versus give up on these Olympics and focus on another 5 years instead of, 2 months away.
No, it definitely is. And ultimately, like, that was a big part of it for me. I was getting back on snow around end December, beginning of January, after taking a month off. And I remember someone within the Snow Australia organization told me, like, well, if you feel like you can train, you can race. And I'm like, no, like, I can't do that. Like, it's different. Like, I get it. You really want me to go, and I appreciate it. That's really nice of you. But, like, I'm 21. I think I was 21 at the time. Like, I want to be ski racing until I'm 30. Like, not like, I don't know if it's like what's worth it or not. And so even then, like once I knew more likely than not I was able to go, we were still trying to figure out if it was the best thing for me to go because there was so much uncertainty around COVID. and everyone around me was getting COVID. And the thought of going to China and testing positive for COVID, we didn't know what would happen then. Like, would I be stuck in China for 4 weeks? Like, and then my entire season's kind of derailed. And there was so many what ifs that it was just, to be honest with you, it was so exhausting that ultimately when I did get hurt, it was kind of freeing, which sounds horrible, but I was like, now I don't have to make any more decisions. It's just.
It's fascinating you say that, because my initial question was going to be January 24, you get that email, you're going to the Olympics. January 25, you do that injury. Must have been the hardest 24 hours or the most emotional. But I mean, kind of in what you're just saying there, it's fascinating or the whole lead up until that moment where you get that email. I mean, before we get to the injury, what was it like at that moment then when you got that email saying you're going to the Olympics after everything you're just touching on? Because obviously there's still so much stress in some way, even though you've achieved this childhood dream of getting an Olympic selection.
Yeah, it definitely was a really interesting period of time. I remember getting the email, and once I finally got the email, I think I was relieved at first. Well, not relieved. I was just excited. And I was actually at a university race with my teammate, Katie Parker, who ended up going to the Beijing Olympics. And I remember walking into her room and I was just crying because I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm really excited that we're both going. Because it was, unfortunately, we were university teammates and it was her and I fighting for the Olympic spot. And so that was a bit awkward, but ultimately it was totally fine. And yeah, once I had made it and made the decision, you know what? It's okay. I don't have to be skiing 100% right now to go and make my 10-year-old self proud. I can go to the Olympics and take it for what it is, and knowing everything that's gone down the past 6 weeks. And that's okay. Not every time you have to go and try and win. You can go for other things too. And so by the time I had finally come around to that thought and I'll just take it for what it is. And it's a once in a lifetime experience. And I've been working my butt off for years to get to this point. It's okay if it doesn't necessarily go the way I want it to go. And by the time I'd finally been excited about it, it was that day that I tear my ACL. So.
Damn. Yeah, because again, it's also that flip side of what we're just talking about in terms of, risk reward. You got future Olympics in you. There is also the flip side of that other things may happen, and this could be sort of that thing. What exactly happened with the injury the next day?
Yeah, I was competing at my university's college, their home college race, and I was doing these races because the past 6 weeks had been very much not enjoyable, and it's always very fun going and racing with the team and just a very positive environment. And it was at home and it was Bluebird days and it was perfect weather. And yeah, I skied down and I was 5-6 skates from the finish and I crashed, and instantly I knew something was wrong, because whenever you crash, they ask if you hear a pop, and you feel and hear a pop. And I knew straight away it wasn't my first injury, so I know what that meant. And yeah, I was just sitting there kind of screaming and crying, and my teammate skied down to me and be like, do you need to sled? And I was like, no, I can ski down, but I'm not going to the Olympics anymore. That's over. And they were like, don't say that, you don't know. I'm like, no, I know. I know. And so, yeah, I skied down on one ski, and luckily at that race, because it was our home race for university, we had our university team doctors there, and I was able to drive down to Salt Lake 25 minutes away and get an MRI. And I knew within 2 hours or 3 hours of me crashing that I tore my ACL. I hadn't done no other damage, needed surgery. So from that perspective, it was really nice because I didn't have any, there was no unknowns. I knew relatively quickly what.
Wasn't a waiting around period.
Yeah, there are a lot of times when people have to wait a long time to get that information. And so I feel very fortunate that at least I got it relatively quick.
Because this is only 10 days from the Olympics, isn't it? This is less than 2 weeks until the opening ceremony.
Yeah. It was I think it was a week before I was meant to fly. Yeah. So
it's such an interesting period then, because, I'm sure you've gotten the email from the AOC, you've gotten the selection. I mean, you're obviously on flights, you're all these kind of things. I mean, does it basically just get cancelled? Do they still give you the option to go along and kind of just almost support if you want to?
Yeah, well, when I was sitting in the doctor's table or in the exam room, obviously I was like, oh, yeah, so no Olympics anymore. He's like, well, you could, if you wanted, give it a week, see how much mobility you get back if it swells up at all, and ski with a brace. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, that's stupid. Like, I'm not skiing without an ACL. I know people have done it, but I'm 21 years old. And at the end of the day, it's not that important. Like, I want to be able to live a long, healthy life. And if that means I don't have to do this so I can crawl on the ground with my kids one day, then that's what it means. So I was given the option to continue to like try and ski, and I was like, nah, I'm good. Like, I don't love that. I'm good. But yeah, no, in terms of going over and stuff, I just wanted to get surgery as soon as I could and move on. And so I actually it was a bit ironic. Was able to get surgery the day I was meant to fly to Beijing.
Wow.
So instead of sitting on a plane, I was sitting in a hospital bed. But like, it's crazy. It's funny how the way the universe kind of works. But
does it put you off wanting to watch them, or are you still tuning in to see, Katie and Greta and people like that compete?
I watched. I stayed, weirdly enough, there was two of my friends who were also in town. They had also done their ACLs at some point in that season. So we had an ACL watching party at my house. We had dinner and then watched the Olympics, because I think
I shouldn't laugh. That sounds it's very sad.
Like, but you can laugh. It's funny. But we sat around and we watched.
Sounds like the funnest, saddest party at the same time.
Yeah. So we made some good dinner though. Good ice cream.
Oh yeah.
So it's good. Yeah.
All right. Sounds like a good way to watch the Olympics. Which, I mean, does it motivate you though? Like, are you sitting there and you're kind of looking at each other going like, wow, look at us. 4 years time, Italy, I think this is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, I don't even know. I think at that point, well, it's not that I don't know. I do know that at that point, I was very much like, I had to like kind of disassociate with like the ski racing identity of myself. Like, I didn't know if I wanted to, like, the past 6 months had been so stressful and like things didn't necessarily go my way. That I was like, oh, if this is what it's going to be, like, this is really hard. And I had just gone from, another factor to that is like, I had gone from being on this private team, and then I was by myself because Australia doesn't have a national team. And so I was traveling the world by myself with my coaches, and I'm quite a social person. So learning to navigate just being solo was so hard. And I remember sitting there being like, if this is what it takes, or if this is how it has to be for me to get to that level, like, I don't know if I can do it. Like, I just don't know if it's that enjoyable. So yeah, when the Olympics were going around at that point, I was just watching as a cheerleader. And to be honest with you, I didn't even I was never in the gym being like, I'm doing this to like be a better skier. I was like, I'm doing this so I can do the things I want to do. And so it was like, I gave myself all these other goals for that rehab. Like I wanted to ride a 100-mile bike race, and I wanted to lift certain weights in the gym just because I wanted to lift them. And I was kind of changed my mindset into like, okay, I'm going to do all the things that makes me happy and healthy. And a byproduct of that is that I'll be able to ski. But having like I'm doing it for ski racing mentality just wasn't going to, I think I had used those lives up. So I needed to find a different mode, or just a different way to look at it.
So when does that return then? When does that sort of return that you go, okay, I'm ready to give this another crack? Because you ultimately do. You've achieved some amazing results since that. So like, at what point we go, let's do this again?
Yeah, I had always knew that I was like going to get back on snow. I was just kind of killing the time mentally to like get me to that point. But yeah, I got back on snow in October or November. So I waited 9 months after. And my goals for that season, which was last year, was like, okay, I want to be able to say confidently at the end of the season that I'm a good skier, because through the whole process of everything, like, I really lost my confidence in myself, and I just wanted to fall back in love with the sport. And so when a lot of people were like, why aren't you racing in Europe last year or going to world champs and doing all this stuff? And I was like, I'm taking a season to myself, and like, I'm going to race close to home and race the NORAM circuit. Like, I want to win some races, and I want to just like chip away at it, so that like, I was like, and if I come out of that year and I hate it, then okay, writing's on the wall, like my skiing, I need to walk away. But like, I don't think that would be the case, and it wasn't. So it kind of was like, a lot of people might have been like, oh, she took a step back, blah, blah, blah. But for me, it was like, I needed to take a step back in order to actually try and take steps forward in the future. So
It's
That's what I
working.
did.
It seems to be
Yeah.
working. You said successes on the NORAMs. I touched on in the intro the NCAA success as well. And recently in Finland, you became the first Australian woman to score World Cup points in slalom in over 20 years since Queen Zali scored that. 25th place you got in Finland. I mean, what was that achievement like? And were you aware that this was something that Australian women hadn't done in 2 decades since Zali Steggall achieved that all those years ago?
Yeah, I definitely knew that no one had scored points in a while, and to be completely honest with you, like my entire goal for the season was to score points once. And to do it in the first race is like, wow, we did that. That was weird. And especially considering it wasn't necessarily my best showing of my own skiing, it was just like highlighted to me and my coaches, like, okay, like normal's enough, like normal can be competitive and we kind of have to back that. And it was really lovely having Lydia Laszlo at the finish, and she was there. My dad actually flew over to watch, which was also really nice. But just having another Aussie in the finish and hearing, it's just like refreshing.
She lives in Finland, doesn't she, too? So I guess it wasn't too far.
Yeah, I was like, you live here? Like, kind of random. We are so far north, like, randomest place in the world. Great ski race. It was really pretty. But yeah, so it was, when I had crossed the finish line on the second run and we were doing a little interview, she was like, so how does it feel to be the first like person to score points in 20 years? It's like, wow, like I don't think I actually, like I didn't think that, it didn't cross my mind like up until that point that I would be that person. I was just trying to do it for myself, you know?
Wow. Did Zali reach out to you? Did Zali sort of send you a message and congratulate you?
I haven't heard from Zali, but I don't blame her. She's busy doing
She's kind of got a bit of a career going on right now, hasn't
definitely
she?
going with all of the counts, like all of the like politics stuff. So yeah, I don't blame her. But yeah, maybe one day when I'm back in Oz, I can catch up with her or something.
Is she a bit of an inspiration for yourself and all sort of female alpine skiers in Australia to see what she obviously achieved still to this day? Australia's only ever alpine skiing medalist at the Olympics, I should say.
I definitely, like, she's definitely like given me the outlook, or I've definitely been able to be like, you know what, like someone's done it, like it's doable, it's not impossible. And you could argue that it's like more accessible. Like, I don't know, there's so many things that are different between now and what it was in 1998 in just terms of like being able to communicate with people at home more often. Like there was just so many different things. And so, yeah, it's definitely in the back of my mind, I was like, it's doable. Someone's done it. Like you can do it too.
Also maybe transition to politics after your skiing career,
I don't know if I have that in me, but maybe.
You never know. Never say never when it comes to that. We'll close out just a moment, Maddie, with some fun get to know you style questions. But before we do, just a couple of things I wanted to find out from you. Obviously, at the time of recording this interview, we've had the announcement from the IOC recently that Salt Lake City preferred candidate for the Olympics in 2034, which, let's be honest, they've got it. They did that with Brisbane. They got the Olympics, so we know that's going there. Does that kind of like, I mean, you'll be 34 in 2034, not to age you, but like that's still, to me, good skiing age. It's younger than I am right now and, you know, still going strong. So that would be, I guess, the closest to a home Olympics you could probably ever get until Australia maybe gets a couple of better chances at it. I mean, does that sort of give a bit of a motivation for a long-term career towards a Salt Lake Olympics?
It's definitely, you know, I would have loved it if they got the 2030 Olympics because because at that point I'll still be 29. And so if they got the 2030 Olympics, like I'll keep chugging. Like that
should have had it, but you know, that's
should have had it, but just because of LA, whatever. I'm not salty about it at all.
Thanks, LA.
But yeah, they're definitely going to get it. And they've been doing so many crazy improvements to the valley in general, like the Salt Lake area. And if, you know, there are people still skiing now at 33, 34, and they're doing great. Like Federica Brignone, she just won 2 back-to-back GS World Cups, and she's the oldest woman to do it at 33. Like, I know it's not impossible. Do I think I can make it to 2034? We'll have to wait and see. If I'm making a living and I'm doing great and I'm competitive, then yeah, I'll keep going. Mainly also because that is my backyard. It's been my home since I was 13. So that would be really cool. But we'll see. Ski racing's a funny thing. So
I
We'll see.
find this is the one byproduct of the ISE doing these long-term Olympics, and I find it, say, particularly like with our summer guests with Brisbane on the horizon, because obviously there's usually a 7-year cycle between the Olympics, but the fact that, say, Brisbane gets announced, we're now, 9 years away from an Olympics here, like, how does that, make it harder or more motivated that you want to keep going longer because there's that prospect? And I guess for you, again, Salt, I mean, I love Salt Lake City. It's a beautiful city. I remember when I went there and just basically geeked out at all the facilities from 2002 because it's one of my favorite Olympics I ever remember experiencing. So I can't wait. I think they're a great city, and they're going to put on another great show just like they did in 2002.
Yeah, I think they'll do a great job, and they're the new airport is like absolutely amazing. They've like created all these new training venues and like competition venues, and it's also one of the few places where like everything they used in the 2002 Olympics is still being used today. So like they don't actually have to do that much work really to like it'll be really lovely, and the people of Utah like are really wanting it to, like, everyone's stoked. That adds to the excitement, where I think not sometimes the Olympics are in places people don't want them, like Paris.
Yeah, my favorite memory of Salt Lake is I was with a friend and I was like take me to where the Olympics were, like, geeking out. So like here's here, here's there. We went and watched a jazz game, and I'm like, oh cool, jazz, but like this is where Stephen Bradbury won gold medal. Let's celebrate that. I was like, take me to the stadium. So we go to the University of Utah, not realizing that the stadium was a university stadium, being naive Australian, thinking they couldn't have an Olympics at a university. And there it is. And I'm just like, wow, okay, this is a stadium, and it's a school stadium. And that's your university, of course.
Yeah. So that like in the back of my mind, I'm like, if I'm still healthy and happy and loving ski racing, it would be really cool. Cause like, Park City, Salt Lake, that's my backyard. We would race on the hills that I've been skiing on since I'm 10. And the opening ceremony would be where I go watch the football games in the
Utes.
fall. Go Utes. But, so it would be really cool. But at this point, I'm just trying to make it through this year.
And then there's two other Olympics to go before those ones. And that one, and sort of go that one. Now, before I close out with these questions, you're actually, you get to be a bit of a history maker on this show, Maddie, I will say, because you were our first guest on this program since we introduced a mascot for this show. We have an off-the-podium mascot called Chairy, and I want to introduce you to Chairy right now. This is Chairy. This is our
nice.
Our lovely... I mean, I've probably given away what he is by the name of him. Can you guess what he is? He's a chair. Thank you. Yes, I should maybe not lead with that. But look... I don't know if you can draw inspiration. He's got a bit of a bung leg. There's a story behind that. But you've gone through a lot of adversity with your injuries and everything along those lines. So perhaps, you can use Chairy for inspiration now moving forward. I mean, do you think he could help you out maybe a little bit?
Yeah, he looks happy. He's got a medal in hand and
he does.
Bandaged him up. So I think he's great inspo.
And he's dual nationality. He's Canadian and Australian, so he helps out there. So there you go. I tell you, if we get some smaller ones of these made and maybe not so flimsy, we can send you one and you can have him as like a good luck charm, perhaps. How does that sound? Yeah,
nice. That would be sick. Yeah.
There you go. All right, there you go, Chairy. Look at that, inspirational. You've been introduced now to our guests. You're being useful, Chairy. Exactly. Not just get thrown around the room. So there you go. I'm glad that's a good start to the Chairy question here on Off the Podium. Speaking of questions, we close it out with a set of fun get-to-know-you style questions. Now, as always, these were questions that were asked to Canadian athletes ahead of both the Pyeongchang and the Rio Olympics. And basically, there are a variety of different questions. I never know what they are. They're usually a standard set, but they alternate them. There is the option to draw. I don't know how you are at drawing. I know you're good at Sudoku, and I know you're good at journaling. So I don't know how are your drawing skills?
Not good. Really
Not
bad,
good.
actually.
Okay.
That's one thing I wish I could do. Be more artsy, but that's okay. You can't do everything in life.
Excuse for practice, though, Maddie. If you want to use this skill between when we air this and after we stop recording this. So the options are, if you want to, you can send them in and we can put them on social media. There's draw a picture of yourself. There's draw a place from your hometown or province, or obviously in our case, a state. And usually it is draw a picture of a Canadian animal. So you can obviously do that with an Australian animal. Although this one, it just says draw a picture of your favorite animal. So they've changed that up. So again, it's up to you. I know you've got a few little races to go between now and the end of the year. Just a couple of World Cups, maybe a bit busy. Just a couple. So potentially might not have the time, but it's out there. Let's start up right now, your favorite Olympic moment is?
I think my favorite Olympic moment was mm, it's kind of random one because it's gymnastics, but there was this girl, US girl, her name's Chairy, and last Summer Olympics, she was like posed to win gold medal and on the vault after Simone kind of withdrew herself from the competition, and everyone's like, oh, Jade has it locked up, and she fell and she didn't win and she got eighth or something. And then the next day she came back and she won the gold medal on the floor exercise. And so to me, that was really cool. It just shows that like every day is a new day, and yeah, you can have bad days, but you don't have to kind of let them define you. And she just like had the resilience to bounce back, and that was really cool to see.
Great answer. I love a good answer like that. Gives you a bit of inspiration. So I appreciate that. I always have to take a moment every time I'm talking to any female alpine skier to talk about Esther Ledecker and like how inspirational. Oh,
that one too. Yeah.
28.
Yeah.
I mean, I am wearing an Esther Ledecker t-shirt just to show it up there as well. So do you get like when you're competing against people like her and obviously like Michaela Schifrin, obviously like these great, you're talking goats and the thing, like, does that inspire, or are they just a competitor? Like, I got to beat them, I don't need to look up to people like that.
I think, they definitely do inspire. There are a lot of things you can, like, obviously they're the best in the world for a reason. You can take a lot of things from what they do and what their team does to get them to where they are. But for me, one thing that I'm kind of focusing on this year when I'm at the World Cups and stuff is to actually keep my head down, because quite easily I found in the past when I was doing them, I would look up and I would feel like I was observing them racing, and then I was just trying to go. And I like kind of would psych myself out, like I didn't really count myself in the same fight as them. And yeah, they're the best in the world, but ultimately, like, I'm also trying to compete against them too. So that's been my thing this season, is just put my music on, keep my head down, like don't necessarily look up at everyone else and what they're doing, just like focus on me and my skiing, and then the results will kind of follow. So yeah.
What's the music? What's the pump up music you're listening to?
I have a bit of a rogue playlist. It's everything from like Tones and I to like the song You Raise Me Up, to some like musical theater, it's really random.
I can't let that go. What musical? Now you're just opening up a can of worms here, Maddie. What musical theatre are we listening?
There's some Hamilton in there. There's some Dear Hanson. You got to have the Wicked in there. It's just a bit of everything.
I like this. I like that. That's very diverse. I was not expecting to go from Tones and I through to Hamilton. So
yeah, there's some Macklemore in there. You got to have anything that I know the words to are in there, so I can distract myself.
Nice. You're not allowed to obviously keep. Are you allowed to keep them in the helmet?
No.
Damn, that would be fun, wouldn't it?
You wear your earpods, and then basically I pull them out when I'm like 3 or 4 people from the start, and I hand them to my coach, and I'm like,
can you get disqualified for that though? Like if you forget?
I think you can, yeah.
Because I think technically you could have a coach or something in your ear, right? Like I'm sure there's
like someone could be, I don't know if this would help or not help, but someone could like be telling you your splits, or like if you're winning the race by a lot first run, and they're like, okay, you're still winning, like you could back off, or I don't know. You could do a lot of things. But
interesting. It'd be fun though. I'm sure that would be fun to be able to go down the hill with some Hamilton in the ear, and
just be like, it would be good. Yeah, but, I just ski instead.
That just beforehand that works. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Time travel. Oh no, not time travel. Yeah, I guess maybe like the ability to just like, there's just so much travel I have to do that if I didn't have to like get on a plane.
Teleportation.
Teleportation. That's what it is. Yeah.
Boom. Time travel would be fun too. But,
time travel would be fun. But
would teleportation. You do, the thing with time travel though, like future or past, like what would you do? Because like future would be cool, but then also how much do you want to know about your future? In the past, like, well, what if you fuck something up? Then all of a sudden, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think if I were to time travel, I would have to go beyond my own life. So either way in the future or way in the past.
Great answer. There you go. Like 1,000 years into the future. Like, because you're not going to bump into yourself by then. So that's clever. I like that. Your favorite sports movie is?
Oh, I don't know if I have a favorite sports movie, but recently my favorite sports TV show was the tennis Breakpoint tennis show that Netflix did. I liked watching the Matildas.
Yep.
Disney Plus show going into the World Cup at home.
Were you here for
Um,
the World Cup?
I was in training in New Zealand, so I was
Damn.
basically there.
Well,
Yeah,
you
it
were
was.
there. Did you see any games in New Zealand though? Like, did you get to go to
I
any over
did
there?
not, unfortunately. No, my
Damn.
family was there, and they got to go watch them, but I was training. Sad.
Were you hooked to it though? Like every
Oh
waking
yeah,
moment.
yeah, for sure. We were diehard fans. Yeah.
Fantastic. Good to see. Your funniest childhood memory is?
Um. Oh, I don't know. Maybe when me and my, so like when you were ski racing in Australia at a young age, you raced in a team. And so me and my teammates, we were racing in Falls Creek and we had all gone out for dinner and it was like absolutely pouring rain. And they had the stage still set up in the village square from when the presentation was. And so we all got up, me and our teammates, our parents, our siblings, were all on the stage screaming, living on a prayer that was blasting in the village center. And we did like a little performance. So that was pretty fun.
Great, as you should. Why
Yeah,
not?
as you should. Why not?
Standard
Bon Jovi.
song to just
Yeah,
get out
good
there.
song.
Is that on the
Yeah.
playlist at all, by any chance? Or?
Maybe deep
Should
down
be.
there because the playlist is quite long at this point. But yeah, I
It's
should
a
add it.
banger.
That's good. Yeah.
Here's a question without notice. Do you have any Meatloaf on the playlist? Do you
I
know
don't.
any? Do you know any Meatloaf songs?
No, I don't.
I was going to say this is where I'm going to say this is where it you talk to people of a certain age now, and I realize that Meatloaf isn't really a thing. We have a random question now where we ask what your favorite Meatloaf song is.
Yeah,
And
okay.
might fall
I
flat
don't know what
this
it
time
is.
around. Yes. Have you ever heard the song "Bat Out of Hell"? Maybe
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Meatloaf. There you go.
Oh, nice.
Yes. If you've ever seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show, he's in that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm going to move on. Otherwise, I sound really old right now. We've kind of answered the next two questions, to be honest. I mean, we're just talking about music right now. Favorite pump up song, and then we've got the most recent TV show that you binge watched. I mean, we kind of covered two aspects of that. So was there another
Yeah.
non-sports one that you've binge watched at all recently?
Yeah, there's one on Netflix right now, All the Light You Cannot See.
Okay. What's that one about?
It is about it's like a World War II movie. It's like a movie TV show. Like each episode's like a minute, an hour long. Basically about this blind girl who is helping the Americans find this town of Saint Malo in Germany, and it's really, really good. It's so good.
We'll add it to the list. There's
It's
always
very,
the list
very
growing.
good,
Interesting. All right. We like to get, suggestions on this show. It always kind of works.
Yeah.
Your least favorite foods are?
My least favorite foods. Anything really, really soggy.
Not a soggy
random
Wheat Bix girl.
Like I do love Wheat Bix, and I guess I will eat them when they're soggy, but like everything tastes better crunchy. And then I hate black licorice. Ugh, so gross.
Right. Okay. Also, you
But
answer
red
my
licorice, so good.
so the crunchy peanut butter. They're not smooth.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, crunchy peanut butter. Yeah.
Red licorice. Okay, good. I that's the first I've heard for a soggy answer. I like it's an interesting element when you talk about certain textures of food, right? Like I hate yogurt with chunks in it. Something about that makes me gag. I can't understand it, but it's just something. I know people who don't like bananas because of the texture of a banana.
Yeah, like I would rather banana be like way too not ripe and like fluoro green than like a little bit.
So you like it
mushy.
really hard. I'm the opposite. I can't stand it when a banana is really hard. Like it just, there's something off-putting. So fascinating. God, we could get some really good psychological questions on this show. We could really get to the bottom of it. If you weren't an athlete, what would you be?
I don't know. I feel like I would maybe not necessarily be trying to be a professional athlete, but I feel like I would always be doing something regarding sport. I don't know what I would be.
I want to ask you on that level though, something to do with mentoring, because I read here you've got your own business mentoring with Mads and Katie.
Yeah. So I definitely, but that like kind of has to do with the fact that I am an athlete. So I don't know. I think it'd be cool to like have a really hip restaurant maybe, or I don't know. I've always really loved doing Pilates, maybe be a Pilates instructor or become a physio, or I don't know, something that has stemmed in movement or health, whichever way that could be. Maybe a sports psych.
That could work. Is the mentoring, so that's you and Katie basically mentoring athletes, is it? Is that kind of what it is? Or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yes, it sounds what it is. Yeah. We just help out there's a lot of things that as an Australian in ski racing that you have a lot more hurdles you have to overcome in terms of like, just like how to do school on the road, or like where do you kind of have to leave Australia at some point, like a bunch of things. So yeah, trying to share the insights we've learned so people don't have to they can learn from our mistakes and not make them themselves.
And I can imagine that's also not just selective for skiing, because there are plenty of sports that Australians have to leave Australia for to face the big wide world where they don't have those resources, right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Fascinating. I like that. Your favorite vacation spot is?
Anywhere with a beach.
You're around snow so much, so, you know.
Yeah, if I could just go home and it'd be beautiful weather and sunny and warm and there'd be a beach, I would be so happy. And like had to travel skiing.
Have you been hearing what the weather's been like in Sydney in the last week? 44 degrees last Saturday, 40 this week as well.
I heard it's hot. Yeah.
I'm from Tasmania originally, Maddie, so I do not handle it very well. So I have an air conditioner and it's my friend. So that's all we can say there. If you could be an Olympian in any other sport other than your own, what would it be?
Either 400-meter running.
Ooh, specific. I like it.
Yeah. Or gymnastics. Yeah, maybe those two.
That works. Summer again. We like it. We you know.
I don't know. I'm like, the winter. No, I'm good. I want summer.
Nah. You just get away from the snow.
Maybe beach volleyball. That would be sick. On
a beach. There you go. Mm-hmm. That works. All right, last question for you, Maddie, and you can interpret this however you want to. Your guilty pleasure. What is your guilty pleasure?
I don't know if it's guilty, but it's just a pleasure that I like to make, like a good meal, and whether it's brunch or dinner, and just sit around with my friends and chat and play board games instead of like going out.
Let's be honest, like we all do.
So I'm just low-key a grandma. It's okay.
It's one of these things where it's like people are like, oh, I love doing this, I love doing that. But if we all had to choose, we're just like, I just want to stay home, sit on the couch, and
I'll just like have a nice home-cooked meal and play some board games,
chill, and just like
yeah, for sure.
Deep down. Maddie, I already tagged it at the top of the show, MadiHoffman.com, obviously the website. Social media, anywhere else people can follow you. The mentoring business, where can people get involved in that?
Yeah, you can find obviously the mentoring business through my website that you've linked, but yeah, I'm just on Instagram. So at Madi Hoffman _ I think is my Instagram handle, but I should probably know that, but yeah.
It will be tagged on this post, of course, on Instagram for people who are listening. But Maddie, this has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate your honesty. Very, really raw and personal, learning all about that experience, and really love to hear that on this show. So thank you for that, and we wish you best of luck moving forward for Milan, for the French Alps, and then Salt Lake. I'm saying now, 2034, you're there. Come on, you'll be two-time gold medalist, Madi Hoffman, by then. You're going for 3 in a row by then.
Yeah, dream big, exactly.